I'm Brother Tahuti, and to my left is my co-host,
Brother Sundiata.
and to my right is our special guest today.
Mike Sandoval.
All right. Our topic today is Black Lives Don't Matter. Just ask the police. We chose that topic because of the spree of killings, the proximity of these killings, in terms of a timeline. They're continuously in the media, week in, week out, and many we don't even hear about. But this heightened aggression, I should say, we want to go to the roots of what we believe that is. We want to talk about what occurred here locally in Los Angeles with the sheriff's shooting of Brother Kizzy. And we're going to talk also about, hopefully some solutions that we may come up with as a collective to move us better and to move us towards ending this. What are the consequences when our people, black and brown, when we're gunned down unceremoniously and wholesale by an entity that was supposed to serve and protect? What are the consequences? Usually it's a promotion or a transfer or maybe a paid vacation, basically. That's what administrative leave, it's pretty much a paid vacation. So if consequences aren't issued, behavior doesn't change. Why would behavior change with no consequences and actually rewards are issued for killing and brutalizing our community? So we're going to talk about that. We'll start with Sundiata, and then we'll go to Mike, and they can give their opening statements on this issues. Black lives don't matter.
Yeah, what's frustrating about it and what's interesting about it, in an election year, we're looking at a different administration but the same behavior. We can go back historically since Ms. Love, and back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and of course further than that. It's just that it seems to be voting does not change the behavior of the police department. We could look at black police chiefs, white police chiefs, black mayors, white mayors, black governors. It seems to be this, they're entrenched in terms of being the arm of the elite to keep us in our place. We're going to look at also the Black Panther parties. We should revisit that in terms of what they were asking for in the 60s and how they were met with such brutality by the federal government. And it just seems like they weren't asking to bomb or kill anybody else. They were just asking others not to kill them, and they were met with extreme violence. And so it seems like we're fatigued now in terms of where we're at as a people, and we're putting all our hopes in Kamala or Biden, who themselves were operating on behalf of the criminal justice system to brutalize black people. So it's just, we're in a precarious position, and that's my position, and I'm waiting to see what Mike has to say about it.
Okay, Mike, let the audience know a little bit about yourself, and then tell us what your perspective is on this issue.
Okay, well, I was born and raised here in Los Angeles. My parents, first generation Mexican. Mm-hmm. My grandparents are from Mexico, came up here. So my heritage is Mexican American. I identify as a Chicano. And so I recognize a lot of the issues that, growing up in the 60s and 70s, a lot of the issues that we were all aware of, that we lived through, and even the ones that we didn't live through, that were before our time,
right.
We were aware of.
Right.
So I'm very much aware of the issues going on in California. It's very disturbing now, especially now. Nothing's really changed. And I can remember when I was in high school, and I had my black friends that would come over, and we'd all hang out. And I remember them explaining to us I'm Mexican, but I grew up on the West Side with all white friends. So
right.
My white friends, and they would explain to us about the police and police brutality. And of course, we didn't understand it because we didn't experience it. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I met a man who a coworker, a black man who his name was Billy Akins, and he I had married a black woman and had a baby at the time, and he started explaining to me a lot of issues and black philosophy, black community, the way he felt it was important for me to understand these things,
Right.
raising a biracial daughter.
Yes. Yes.
And so I thank him, and he made me remember these things that my teenage friends had told me 10 years earlier
Right.
that I had dismissed kind of as a white person, kind of, like, oh, well, it's not something I can understand, or it's not an issue that means anything to me.
Right.
But then Billy Akins was able to explain it to me in a way that not only did he explain the black culture, the black experience from his point of view, but also he opened my eyes to my Mexican heritage,
Right.
and it gave me a different way of looking at my own experience
Right.
and my own identity.
Right.
I have to thank him for that. I mean, it was one of the greatest experiences I had was having him as a friend. He was an older man. He wasn't my age. He was grown. He was an adult. I was a young guy. He was a grown man, but he took it upon himself to teach me so much.
Oh, that's great.
And it was a great experience, and so that's why I feel like because I always did have to have understood that white people are racist, because growing up with white people, they expressed their racism to me,
Right.
thinking that I would go along with them. So that's where I come from. That's what I bring.
That's very good, because a lot of experiences that are not afforded to everyone you've had, and it's interesting to hear the dedication of the Mr. Akers. You say Akins?
Mr. Akins, yes.
Just the time, the to spend and the talk. And to make sure that you could really get an idea. And like you said, that opens up. Once we start that type of dialogue, we find commonality, we find common experience, we find all of the things that are really unifying in our history. It comes together. When I taught high school, it was similar. We had different groups on campus, and we were able to bring them together. We had the African Student Union, and we had METCHA, and we had groups that we could bring together on common history, and the common thing that I would teach was the common oppressor. You have a common oppressor, and let's deal with that, and then we can move forward. But all of the divisions that come into play usually are taught, and those are taught by us imitating, I guess, the standards that are put out by that oppressor, and so we see each other through those lenses. And then I'm saying, so wait a minute, you guys are shooting each other down on something that neither one of you even created. So that was a great teaching tool.
Yeah, I want to say it's interesting how being a Mexican heritage and then growing up in the West Side, being so close to the privileged status that you kind of get absorbed by it, and then having been reminded, like, wait a minute, well, my people are being shot down.
Absolutely.
Also, so it's very interesting when we look at this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I definitely benefited from white privilege all my whole life when it came to dealing with the police or any type of job interviews or things like that. I always went in as a white, not like I was pretending to be a white person, but I just went in as me, and
Right.
they looked at me as I was a white person, and I
Right.
just, there was never any. But now that I'm older, and I guess maybe because of my features, I'm an older man now. I'm not a young kid. I don't have long hair. I look like a hippie.
Right.
I look more. I guess I look more like a Mexican man because I get spoken to in Spanish
Yeah.
much more
Yeah.
by people that don't know me.
Yeah.
They speak to me in Spanish.
Right,
They
right.
Start talking to me in Spanish.
Right.
And so it's a different experience. And also I had a couple experiences with the police as an adult, and I was treated completely different. And I was harassed and intimidated, and I thought I was going for nothing. I hadn't done anything.
Right.
And they made up stories about why I was being detained and all of these things, and I didn't understand why until it dawned on me. I was like, oh, they're treating me like a minority, like I'm being treated like a Mexican. That's what it was. I was being treated like a Mexican. So
let's get into some of that, the origins of policing in America. We need to go into it because they set up the police or watch. They had like call them watchmen, and they would watch basically townships. In the early days of America, you didn't really need police because there was no big urban areas. Right. So it was mainly farms and agriculture. So it wasn't that much concentration where a need for policing took place. But when they started the slave system, they had a need, and the need was to ensure that there were no runaways and to make sure that they were returned to the plantation or the agricultural system, right, so that they can keep that production going. So that's the origins of policing in the United States. They took after the British and a military model, and they ranked, the officers or the watch people as such. But then you have the fear that took place. There was always a fear of rebellion in terms of the population of slaves as well as the Native Americans. They always had a fear of rebellion, and that rebellion was not just out of anger or just conflict. It was out of the wrong that was done to those groups. And so with that fear, the police philosophy came into play. So then your policing was basically to control those populations, to terrorize those populations, to keep those populations behaviors in lines so that their fears wouldn't be realized.
Right. And as the country moved west, it also shifted, expanded to include the Native Americans and also the Mexicans as they took over the western states that was full of Mexicans, or that had Mexican populations. So they had to also protect the white people from the Native Americans and the brown people, and use that force to keep those people in check.
And then earlier, what we don't realize, because they don't teach history properly in school, is that they always use one group against the other, and they did that early on. The Seminoles is not necessarily a tribe, but it's actually a collection of people that actually fought the United States government. And at one point, when they had broken the Seminoles' backs and they were attempting to remove them, there was actually an African slave who was fighting with our enslaved, actually gained his freedom by fighting along with the Seminoles. He actually went to Mexico to get his freedom. So a lot of Africans were running down to Mexico. And also, what we don't realize in the Civil War, we celebrate the Cinco de Mayo, but we never link it up with the Civil War. Cinco de Mayo was actually a benefit for African Americans because it was the French attempt to go and bolster the Southern Army against the North. So that defeat in Cinco de Mayo stopped them. They eventually lost the war itself, but that defeat stopped the Napoleon's nephew from hooking up with the South to go ahead and defeat the North, which actually benefit us. So they don't teach us that because it's constant division. Right,
and the fact that Mexico outlawed slavery and was allowing slaves to enter Mexico and would not return them was a main agitation for the United States to go to war against Mexico and take the land, which they thought was going to be slave land. When they took it, they thought that was all going to be slave land, but then
things happened.
The Civil War happened and they outlawed slavery, so that kind of backfired on them. But that was the intent.
So this kind of teaching they don't teach in school.
They don't teach.
So and they're constantly keeping that division between one group and the other, and not letting you know that the unity of both creates benefits for both.
And if we fast forward throughout history, when you talk about the quote unquote riots, most riots are white people fighting or killing people of color. If you go through the history of so-called riots, they call it a riot when our people are attacked. In both cases, and especially if we come here locally, you saw the Zoot Suit riots in the 40s, and then you had, of course, all of the riots that occurred. You know, the Watts riot and the coming together of our people against these oppressive forces is a common history. You got the Black Panthers, and then you had the Brown Berets. Right. You also have the Chicano movement.
The Brown Berets
is part of it. But we have different. How can I say, different pockets of resistance that were coexisting, and had no issues identifying who our enemy was, and I think that as we move forward now, contemporarily, we're gonna need that again, because it's an outright outrage, the killings that we're going to talk about. And if you want to call in, once again, let me remind you of the phone number. It's 424-234-8670. We welcome your comments. You can comment on the chat, or you can call in, and we're going to continue some of this history. We mentioned some of the killings, and we're going to stay local. If we go back to Eula May Love, you mentioned, right. She got killed in the 70s over a gas bill of $18, I think it was, or something.
That sparked the Watts Rebellion.
Yeah,
also.
Yeah.
Police brutality.
Well, yeah, the brutality on the streets. Yeah, that sparked the Watts Rebellion. But this oppressive mindset. If you go with Chief Parker, who was J. Edgar Hoover's cohort or right hand man, and they had like this mentality of just brutalization and oppression, no matter what, and they're on record just identifying our people, harassing, beating to the point where we get tired, and as we do, react, and then this explosion takes place that they call a quote-unquote riot. But it's always precipitated by violence against, law-abiding citizens.
Absolutely.
Tell me, in your household, what did your parents think about being, because they were first generation, they had just arrived, right? And so what did they think about the police brutality? Or they never really spoke about it?
My parents never really spoke a lot about politics. They were Democrats. My dad was a big union man. So he was a big union man for workers' rights, and he was a committee man. So he helped write the UAW, and so I knew my dad was all a liberal thinking guy, a Democrat. He was for the small guy. He wasn't a conservative. He wasn't a Republican. Right. But he didn't talk about politics a lot. He didn't talk. He was a man of few words. He didn't talk a lot. My mom was same thing. She didn't talk about politics a lot. But I knew where they stand. They were not Nixon.
Right,
they weren't for Nixon or anything like that.
Yeah.
Growing up, but my parents came up at a time they didn't talk a lot about race, a lot about those type of things. They didn't teach me any type of racism or any prejudice or any bigotry. I didn't grow up hearing anything negative from my parents about anybody. So they were very good about that. They didn't teach me any hatred or any negative. I learned that in school.
That's a great point, and I think that's what got us here in terms of not having really a strong group, a unified group to combat what we're seeing in the street, because there was a push after the 60s and 70s. There was a lot of propaganda for us not to recognize color, while at the same time we were being warred upon based on color. Are you following me? So there was a push for black and brown people not to see the society as being racially stratified, when all the while it was. So you mentioned it's like this benign neglect, or this colorblind racism. This colorblind racism, so where you could be cool with people, but they actually are, practice their dominant belief, or their majority belief is very racist. They see them as them and us as us. Like many times growing up in the West Side, also people would say, "Well, you don't act like them," and they're supposed to be friends and friends of mine and stuff. You know, like I'm sure people told you, well, you don't act like a
Yeah, I got
Mexican,
that too.
and you're not like a wetback, or you're not like a, you know. So so all of a sudden they remove you from the group so
Right.
they can practice a
racist
person.
term.
though.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I would say my standard reply would be like, "Hey, They'd say, well, you know, I don't like Mexicans or I'm Mexican this," and I'd say, "Well, hey, man, I'm Mexican."
See?
and they would say, "Well, you know what I mean."
You know what I mean? You know, and see and see that lulled us to sleep. So instead of having to hear that and then organize, we should have just organized. Period. And like that's where we're at right now. The reason why you're going to rallies and people aren't there is because we used to have a strong network, and we used to know what the opposition was. Now it's a benign neglect. Now it's colorblind. Now it's like, now you ask our children are allowing other people to call us nigga. You ask the young black children, and they're saying, "Oh, yeah, it's okay for them to call us nigga because they like our music, they like our dance, they like it." So it's like the friendliness of it is causing our children not to recognize
The danger.
You're
The
still
danger.
in a racist society that will kill you, and we have no answer for it.
Well, you know,
we
like
can't stop
like
it.
you were saying earlier, like we become numb
Yes.
Yeah.
to some of this, because if I had to challenge every white person that said something racist about Mexicans to me, not knowing I was Mexican,
Right.
I would spend my whole day
Right.
Right.
and night
Right.
of every day of every year
Right.
rebutting them and challenging it. Eventually, you guys got to say, you know, I got to just turn it off. I just can't do it.
Right. Right.
And that's so frustrating because that's just giving them a pass.
Right. So let's look at that. Let's start challenging these concepts and ideas, because like you both said, too often we're taught or they're conveying the message of let's just not talk about that.
Right.
And the danger. And so the danger exists. You know, our children are in danger. You know, our young people are dying.
Yeah.
You know, and even us, you know, we'll drive down the street and see the police car. We have to tighten our
an
lips,
account.
you know, and take an account and look, you know, and check that rear view mirror and make sure that, you know, that U-turn is not about to happen.
Right.
And we got to take a deep breath, you know.
right.
So that's what we're saying, that type of weight and that type of pressure on a constant basis. And then, you know, how frustrating it is to hear people deny its existence, you know, constantly dog whistling, constantly using buzzwords, maybe not quote unquote as blatant as in the past, but still buzzwords just the same, that denote racist attitudes and racist behavior. And I will always say, the existential threat to the world is white supremacy. And until we change that mentality, we will continue to have these dangerous situations. So let's fast forward to this shooting. We need to show the clip if you're ready. Can we show that clip of the young man that was gunned down? Now the reports were this young man was on the bike riding, and then the police pulled up and they said for some sort of violation on the bike, some sort of traffic violation with a bicycle. And so we have the sheriff department who are, you know, that those crime fighters are going to come in and use these resources on a bike rider, swarm in. He drops the bike and starts fleeing on foot. He flees on foot. They say that he punches some officer and some other things occurred, and they saw a gun in some clothes that he allegedly dropped. They saw a weapon, but he supposedly had punched somebody, and then they, of course, shot at him, I believe, over 20 times. So we want to see the clip, and then we'll comment on it afterwards. Yes, This is why we're serious. That's very disturbing to see. That Mr. Kizzy had his hands up. The deputy attacks him. There's a scuffle, and he puts his hands up and turns to walk away, and they unload on him, and this causes an extreme pain in our community. And so people react to that, and then you get all of the counter disinformation. You could play it one more time. Yeah, that would be good. Let's play it back so you guys. Okay, back again. Sundiata, when you see that, when you see him walking away on the ground, and they continue to unload, what does that symbolize in terms of our status? When they say Black Lives Matter and we say Black Lives don't matter,
Right.
look at that.
Right. And, I think it's this continuation. Like I said, you can look at Tim Rice's case with the young boy, with the
Tamir.
Tamir Rice. I'm sorry. When he came out, and then they shot him immediately after seeing him, which was brutal. And the NBA went on, and like right now we're talking about the strike. The NBA was supposed to strike, and then Obama and Michael Jordan told them to keep playing. So the brutality of the other side, I'm not so much shocked by because I've seen it so much, but I'm more amazed about our ability now to keep functioning in an abnormal time. And like Mike was sharing with us, they're always constantly saying, life as usual, just keep going. And these are horrible. These are genocidal behavior on a part, and people don't realize this. Digress for a second. They killed 1 million Muslims, and I always said, I was telling everybody during the Iraqi war, and the Iraqis did nothing to the United States, and they killed 1 million Muslims. And we went on our day-to-day business, went to the store, went and watched the game, came home, went to sleep, woke up. And I always tell people that those 1 million people could have just as been black people. Because Earl Grant used to always say, they took a study in the 60s. Then they said, what would happen if we just killed all black people? They did a survey in the United States.
The book's called The Choice.
Yeah, the book called The Choice. And to everyone's horror, the people said nothing. They
wouldn't even care.
They wouldn't even care. So we look at the Holocaust and we think that happened a long time ago. It wouldn't happen again. Another Hitler type character, and we don't understand that this benign neglect, how one part of town can go on while another town has murder happen by the state violence. And then you can go to a demonstration like you went to, and you don't really see the outrage you thought you would see by the hundreds. And that's what's scary part about it. We're now accepting as life is normal.
Right. Talk about that, or what your feelings were when you were out there when they started demonstrating.
Well, I felt that it was an important moment that we should all come together for that. It was the timing was horrible, so I felt that the response would match the event. The response would be proportional to the event, and the event was momentous. So I thought the response would be. And so when I went out, and there was people there, and there was a march. There were people there, but I really felt it was going to be a much larger response, something that would really shock everyone. And I'm glad I went because I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be part of something that's important. So when I got there and I saw that I was there and there were other people there and we all felt the same way, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was a little I was a little disappointed with
Right.
humanity that wasn't coming out to stand
Right.
up. We need to all stand up and
Right.
and.
But see, I think that's part of the conditioning we were talking about. How they're in the educational system, it's being promoted. You know, to be so benign and so non-confrontational that you know it's really hard to ignite in certain instances because of they have to overcome everything in the curriculum that tells them, oh, it's no racism, there's no problem. You can get a cause, but it's going to have to be a cause that is kind of broad in general that encompasses everyone, but everyone is not the victim in these cases, and that's our point.
And I think go ahead.
No, the only other thing I was going to say was because when they talk about the Black Lives Matters and they yell Blue Lives Matter, all lives matter, we nobody's saying they don't, but that argument is to shift the focus off of the group that's being victimized.
It's avoiding the issue.
Yeah, and then also I think it goes back to once I was saying before that we're actually buying into the fact that let's not protest because let's take the NBA. You know, here we are right in the middle of all this craziness, and you had two black men, most respected men in America, Michael Jordan and President Obama. President Obama saying, "Go ahead and go back and play, go back and finish the season." And ironically, it was the L.A. Clippers and L.A. Lakers who were the team that were leading them off the court and said, we can't play while we're being killed in the street. This is a distraction. And then they were told, go back to play. And then ironically, in their town, the murders occur. And so, I don't think I don't think any other group of people, I don't think America, like after 9/11, they were thinking, oh, we got to really recognize this. Here we're like get past that and move on, and that's what we're doing as a people. We're normalizing these murders, and we're not stopping everything.
But even as a country, we have I think 4 or 5 servicemen killed in Fort Hood in the last, I don't know how, in the last couple of months.
Right,
These dead bodies showing up.
Yeah.
They all happen to be Latinos. They all happen to be something going
right.
on there
It's not right.
that we're not being told. And the whole country seems to not care really.
Yeah,
It's just like it's not an issue.
It's
Where anywhere else it would be the biggest thing ever.
It's
but so much other stuff is going on that a story like Force. These are servicemen.
Yeah.
These are soldiers, right?
Yeah,
These are guys
yeah.
they're being trained to
Right.
go and fight and defend the country, and they're ending up dead,
Yeah.
mysteriously
Yeah.
killed, dead,
Yeah.
and it's not even, no one's even talking about it.
No one's talking about it, and they really wonder where are the religious institutions? Where are the leadership in our community? You can see how far removed they are from really, in acting on behalf of the people. I think we all are, because if we look at our candidates, the Democratic Party candidates, how in this year when we have police brutality as a number one problem, do we have candidates who were police friendly? Why it's cynical to think that at this time where we dislike Trump, and they could have ran a very progressive candidate that everybody could have rallied behind. But it's cynical because they knew you were going to turn around and run back to the Democratic Party. And who do they give you? They give you a woman who smiled and laughed about putting black mothers in jail over truancy. And they give you a man who said, I don't care what their background is, we're not going to give any excuses. We're going to lock these kids up when he passed a crime bill. So this is our issue with the Democratic Party. And we have learned ourselves to forget about the crimes inflicted upon us and just move forward. That's what I'm getting at, is like right now we find ourselves, even our so-called leadership, our religious leadership and others, because in the 60s we used to act quickly, because Earl would always say, that wouldn't happen in the 60s. You all let a lot of stuff go,
Yeah. We got 2 callers. Oh, okay. Here comes another view of this killing.
They own him. They own him. He out of here. He gone. He out of here. He was trying to dump on him too. Plus he was gonna dump him out. He got him. They smoked him.
What happened to your
They smoked him. They smoked him, fool. That's crazy. They smoked him, fool. On blood, they smoked him, fool. They smoked him, bro. They shot that nigga like 20 times. Auntie, come over here, Auntie. Watch out. Fuck 12. Fuck 12. Fuck 12. Y'all niggas scandalous. Look, aired him out.
Yeah.
Aired him out. Look, and he still got his gun. Look, he dead already, nigga. He already dead. Weird ass nigga. Fuck 12.
Exactly.
He
No
already
consequences.
dead. He dead already.
In the community. Actually,
He still got his guns on him.
They, you know, you
Nigga,
still
that nigga
feel
ain't
like,
got
look,
nothing,
This
nigga.
what they do to you. It's
He
just like
dead,
when they used to grab
nigga.
an enslaved
What is you
person
doing?
and do something horrible.
What
and
are
let
you
everybody see it as
doing?
an example. And our
Auntie
leadership
Tiny,
is so
back up.
poor.
Auntie Tiny,
Like, you
back
haven't heard
up, Auntie
Obama
Tiny.
mention anything about this.
What are you
haven't
doing,
heard
though? He
Biden,
dead
you haven't heard
already.
Kamala, nothing.
What are you doing? Look at that shit. That's crazy. Look at that shit. That's crazy.
And watch
Man,
him.
they
They're
ain't
gonna
doing no
handcuff
fucking
him, too,
job. Look
probably.
at that shit. Y'all killing people. Y'all ain't doing no fucking job. Look at that shit.
Yeah.
How you gonna handcuff a dead man?
Yeah, they're actually.
How you gonna handcuff a dead man?
The wealthy, the 1% of
How you gonna handcuff a dead man?
Pensions, to take over the funding of the police. 'Cause they're already talking
You
about it.
niggas is weird. How the
Yeah. Again.
So they're, you know.
The court,
They
Yeah.
own him.
Yeah.
they were able to get away with that.
They own him. He out of here. He
They're sending a message to the police
Ever
that you can do
since
anything
then,
you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything, you know.
So it doesn't matter if you're on tape or not. We
Yeah.
let you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's- We back? Okay. It's back at yeah. No, the video's paused now. But we're back at this out there with impunity. You know, there it's like a big deal. And just think of the outrage in other countries what that would bring about. They would be pointing a finger if this was one of those a socialist country or a communist country. They'll be talking about human rights abuse. They'll be talking about you know, they need to bring in the UN, you know, and X, Y, and Z. This stuff happens daily. At one point a few years ago, we did the statistics, and a person was being shot every 28 seconds.
That was Obama's presidency.
And during Obama's presidency, every 28 seconds,
Yeah.
by a police officer.
Yeah. Yeah, they've used politics actually to silence the people. In 1970s, 1972, we had a big convention, the Black National Convention in Gary, Indiana. And it was at that time when all those leaders in the 60s that were actually fighting the system were invited into the system, into the Democratic Party. And they were invited in there because Barry Goldwater, as a matter of fact, Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. He was so racist that blacks started quitting the Republican Party and whites started running to the Republican Party. So the Democrats knew. Lyndon B. Johnson said that after he signed those civil rights bills in the 1960s, he said, I have lost generations of Republicans now. And so when they lost those Democrats to the Republican Party, they had to go to black leadership and say, look, come into this party and bring your people to keep us relevant. And instead of being on the outside and keeping pressure, we bought in, our leadership bought in, our religious leaders bought in to the Democratic Party. That's why they're telling us, be quiet, just get them elected. And it's become, be quiet. It's become, let this thing keep going and really not take the action that we need to be taking because we want to elect these people. And we know through every administration, this police violence has occurred regardless of whether or not there's a Democrat in office or a Republican in office.
And we can't go with that.
Yeah, it has. The leadership changes, but nothing the
changed.
behavior doesn't change.
The behavior doesn't change.
It's
they
the
aren't
same,
afraid of anything. And
it's
then
the same game.
And
They're on the same
Floyd.
team.
Look at George Floyd. You had a Democratic mayor and a Democratic governor.
That doesn't matter.
It
though.
didn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We
that's
had
just a
Jerry
labor.
Brown. We had Tom Bradley.
Yeah, it's
we
just
had,
a labor.
We had the police chief that they brought in from
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
exactly.
Nothing changed.
Nothing changed.
Willie West.
Yeah, Willie West. You know,
But I mean, no, not Willie West. That's the coach. But
no, Willie.
anyway.
What was his name?
Not Bratton.
No.
his name, but yeah, he came in.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, they ran.
But the point is that it's the same
They own
team.
him.
It's the same team. It's Democrat and
own him. He outta
Republican
here.
is no
He
different.
gone.
No
It's the
different.
same
He outta
team.
here.
They come together, and you're going to have wealthy elites trying to get more money, and then you're going to have the collective who they're trying to fool.
Yes,
and that's both parties. It's always been both parties. We said there's no such thing as a difference. There's
Right.
no bipartisan and all these other games. These are games that are played for the public, but they're the same team. And the whole thing is, how are the consequences going to be issued? And you got some people say, the traditional leadership says go vote. They say, but they don't speak up on our issues. So you telling these youth to be quiet, and they see and witness with these smartphones and the instant access to these images and death. You know, in a week's
they saw them
time.
before.
But in a week's time,
They saw them in
look.
the
The
60s,
thing with the
70s.
NBA started with Milwaukee.
Yeah.
What is it? Kenosha.
Yeah.
Wisconsin. It started with the Bucks with them, and then within a week, without a week going by, you still had the shooting here.
Right.
And so this is what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
man.
it is. Yeah.
There's no
And
consequences.
then if they go back to playing and finish the season, then what was the point of them stopping and not
the first
playing that one day?
Yeah. And then if you finish the season, then you have no more leverage.
There's no
right
leverage.
now. You have leverage now because you have big companies looking, and you have the world looking. That's the main thing.
They had all the leverage that day when they said we're not playing.
They should have not played because you have the world looking. And America, what they do not like to tell us inside is that they don't want the world to see what's going on inside because they need you're violating human rights to beat everybody else with. So when the NBA players got together and said, we're going to shut this down, and the world is tuning in and wondering why, it then would have gotten like the Breonna Taylor situation with the young girl who they murdered in her house, and then they got her ex-boyfriend to try to say that she was involved in a drug syndicate. It can't get any worse than this. You're killing us, and on top of it,
You're murdering our image.
yeah, you're murdering images. So so what we're looking at now, we have to go back to saying we have to separate from both parties, and we have to create an independent group, an independent movement that says we're not going to just give our votes to anybody, and we can control local politics better. You know, because right now, the way it looks right now in America, it's coming down to the fact where you have the right wing, the right wing violent militias on one hand, and you have a violent police department on the other hand. That's a terrible mix. Because if you look at what happened to us in the past when they murdered all those towns across the United States, and actually it was 100 years ago in the Red Summer, it was the mixture of the Klan and law enforcement. And black people don't understand this. Black people really don't understand. They always say, well, black on black crime, black. No, you don't understand when the state is sponsoring murder.
State-sponsored
They're
terrorism.
supposed to stop those killing you, and they are killing you when those two come together. Like the 17-year-old with the gun and the police saw it, didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, you're in crosshairs.
Yeah.
And see, that's what we're trying to get across is that look at the reality. Look at what is going on. It's state-sponsored terrorism. And that was one of the questions, too. When they talk about, they're using a buzzword now, domestic terrorism. Listen to them. Domestic terrorism is going to be a precursor for them to bring in troops. I guarantee you.
Well, yeah, when they label protesters a domestic terrorist, that means you can't go and protest when the police kill someone in the street. You can't go protest.
You can't.
That's right.
Because you're considered
You're a terrorist.
You're a terrorist.
Also, we're not linking together is when they were locking up those youth, those Hispanic youths, and I was telling people when they're locking them up like that, that is not just for them, but that's a precursor to anybody they can start locking up without due
process.
due process.
When we're
Because
talking,
because all that's denied in state of emergencies. They can lock you up for anything, and you wait until you get before the courts. So when you start talking about these things coming together, we've been looking at it for years, and it's starting to converge. When Trump starts having military men on the street, and they have no and they have no labels,
identification.
no identification. You're like, who are you? You know, you're private police force. You are mercenaries coming in.
Those are the same as the brown shirts in Nazi Germany.
You're going to end up in a concentration camp with a little Mexican kid.
Exactly. That's what you're going to do.
And,
no, really.
And don't even play with the immigration rights issue, because there's African immigrants that get that same treatment.
Oh, absolutely.
The immigration rights is a big issue that is swept under the rug. And they still talk about what does the wall symbolize? It's symbolizing the same thing that they did at the turn of the century, when you were talking about when they made sure that only European immigrants were allowed to come in, and they curbed immigration from any country that had people of color.
Right.
Well, you're seeing the same thing now. You know, this is a result of this assertion of white male privilege. That's what I call it. You know, and Trump, you know, is rallying that aspect of this society.
He said he wants whites from
He
Europe.
wants more
to come
white
in.
people to come.
He said it.
He knows history. People think he's
it.
dumb, but he knows someone's telling him history, and we don't know history, so we laugh at it. But really, what he's saying, and like H-1B1, the visas to come in, he said, no, we need smarter people to come in, to allow them to come in, because those people, they're going to be the ones, you know.
Those white people don't want to come. They don't want to come.
One more time, we have a phone caller. Caller, go ahead. We're waiting. And the number is, maybe they got disconnected.
Yep, call back. But yeah. So yeah, we're gonna link
once
all
again.
those
And what's the
together.
number? Could you put the number up again? Yeah. So, but it's very necessary that we identify this and understand that we're talking freely as people in this country. However, this issue is an international issue.
Right.
It's a global issue in terms of people population, because birth rates for European is the death rates, I think, exceed the birth rate now,
Yeah, they do.
and they're very concerned about that. So we're not saying you're not going to exist as a human being, but to exist as a human being, you may not have blonde hair, blue eyes.
Right.
We got the caller. Okay, caller, how are you?
Speak up.
Hey guys, how you doing tonight?
We're doing pretty good.
I just want to make excuse me, 2 quick comments. When you look at the video and you see the brother, he's running away. Now, as a cop, I'm still not understanding, because same thing that happened in Kenosha. Somebody has their back towards you. What threat does this guy pose to the police with his back to them, running away? And I've said this on other shows. I have a concealed carry license, and they teach you it's illegal for you to even pull out your firearm unless you feel like you're in a deadly threat situation.
That's right.
So how is that a deadly threat when somebody's running away from you? They specifically tell me, if a person is running away from you, you shoot them in the back, that's murder.
Wow.
That's murder. That's part of the concealed carry class. That's what they teach you. You cannot shoot someone in the back.
Yeah.
They have to be coming towards you,
And
and you have to feel like your life is in danger to pull out that weapon and shoot them. And they even have scenarios where, say you were at home, and they even break it down, because I live in Nevada, whereas the Wild Wild West over here, you could walk outside with your gun on your hip the first day that you get your gun, with your gun fully loaded with one in the chamber, hollow points. Okay, that's how it is in Nevada. So even here, if somebody kicks your door down and they're facing you, and they just stand at your door and they don't come in your house, you cannot shoot them.
Right.
You can't shoot them. Only way you can shoot them if they're running towards you and you feel like they have a deadly weapon, or they're running towards you, and then you pull out your gun, shoot them, then it's okay. So how is it that we have officers, policemen that are trained, and you tell me that it's okay every time to shoot these brothers in the back. Every single time that I see a video, I see somebody running the opposite direction, and the police are shooting them in the back.
Yeah.
And they sanctioning it, brother. That's you're exactly right. And all of those trainings and all of that, they know that if they violate us, there's no consequences. And that's our main issue. Why aren't there consequences for this? And you know, if it was you or I, like you said, they would lock us up, and no problem. And to me, it should be the opposite. If it's a person that's in charge of enforcing the law that violates the law, they should get the harsher sentence.
I agree 100%. How is it that you're supposed to know the law,
Right.
and then you get away scot free?
What's your
And on top of this, I'm sorry, last part is that once they shoot the person and it gets on the news, then all of a sudden, oh, this person is a felon.
right?
This person has this. But let me tell you, he wasn't in the car. Both times, the Kenosha shooting and the one that just happened in L.A., you weren't in the car. You know why that's important to say? Because if you were in the car, they'd pull you over, get your license, then they could run your license and find out what you
Right.
have and warrant.
Right.
They didn't even notice. None of those guys had any type of prior convictions, anything.
Right.
No.
You know what
What's
their
your-
prior conviction? Their prior conviction were they both were black.
Black
That's
skin.
what their prior conviction.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
Let me
it.
ask
And
you-
that's
I'll
and
do it.
that's the problem that I have is that they come up with all these. Well, he was a sex offender. Well, he was a known convict or convicted felon, and that's BS.
What's your
they did.
Because I understand that you're law enforcement, right?
No, I'm not law enforcement.
Oh, okay.
I'm a regular citizen, but I
okay,
have a
okay.
concealed carry license.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that they train you.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you what you're allowed to do so that you don't go to jail for murder.
And what's the mood in Nevada about these killings? So what's happening in Nevada among people?
And what's happening in Nevada?
I said, what's the mood and the sentiment in Nevada?
Oh, come on, Nevada. They're most of them. They side with Trump. They, I see a lot of these, hillbilly type dudes that driving around in their pickup trucks all the time with their blue flag, for the cops and all that stuff. And that's why. And that's another thing that's very important. I don't know what you guys agree on about this, but that's why I made sure, because I wasn't a gun owner before, but now, because I used to live in California, but now I went and I learned how to use a
definitely,
weapon,
without a doubt.
and not only that, but I take my kids to the gun range and
That's
teach them how to use a weapon. Because guess what I see?
What is that?
I see all those white kids
Yeah.
Yes.
all the time being trained. They're trained from birth
Yeah.
on how to use that gun and ride around with rifles and things like that. And then here it is. Our people, we get guns illegally when we don't have to.
Right.
And then we don't even learn how to shoot properly.
Right.
So learn how to shoot properly and learn how to defend yourself. Understand your rights. Have yourself prepared so just in case you're in a situation, you can defend yourself. Because right now, gun sales are going through the roof.
Yeah.
And if you're not checking, one of the largest people that's buying right now are black people.
Mhm.
We're buying guns
Right.
now.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time in the gun stores. I see more and more black people buying guns, and I'm happy to see it. And I want to see more black people go to the ranges because you know what?
Oh.
If white people know that we know how to shoot and we know how to defend ourselves,
Yeah.
I think they'll be less likely to ride around in trucks while we're jogging.
Yeah.
That's
come
true.
shoot us in the back,
Ain't no
okay?
All right,
'Cause
thank-
they're- 'cause
When the rabbit got the gun.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you, brother. Thank you for those comments. And we're gonna go to Mike. He had a comment you want to say.
Yeah, the caller, he brought up a point, made me think of an issue where you see these high speed chases on the news, and the guys are speeding through the streets and
Yeah.
doing all this crazy stuff, and
yeah.
he's going around, and the cops are following him, and then every now and then they'll say, oh, he's too erratic. Cops are going to pull back,
Yeah.
and they're going to just let him go.
Let him go. Yeah.
Right?
Because somebody might get hurt.
Because
Yeah.
somebody might get hurt.
Yep. Yeah.
But a guy on a bike
Yeah.
who's running away, they can't pull back and let him go
No.
and go get him later.
Right.
And 20 times.
They got to shoot him 20 times.
20 times.
But a guy in a car who's on a high speed chase who's putting multiple lives in danger.
85.
Well, we got to
90.
talk about because
you're right.
it's not we're not
right.
we're acting like we're appealing to a consciousness that does not exist, in my opinion. I think that there's a wolf mentality, a wolf pack mentality, and the energy feeds off of each other. You know, when they get into that mode of hunt,
it's a personal thing with it.
Exactly.
If it's a car and they're chasing the car, it's not personal yet.
But once they see that, their adrenaline goes, and it's open season. And unfortunately, that has been allowed. Now, no matter how professional people claim these organizations, we're celebrating killers. And now we can't say that we don't. Look at society. In war, in military, we celebrate killers. You celebrated Patton. You celebrated Eisenhower. You know, you celebrate all of these, McCarthy. You celebrate them when they're at war. They celebrate Colin Powell, or they'll celebrate all of these generals.
Well, so what's interesting about that, along with that though, they also have identified who the enemy is, who the Indian is, who the Muslim is, who the Japanese is, who the Chinese. If you look at United States history, they've identified their enemy by not being non-white, and that's what Trump has been able to do, and that's why these police officers have been emboldened to do what they want to do, because now they said, okay, because they've always been that way. Because you mentioned these kids that we grew up with that would say, well, you're Mexican, but you're not like the rest of them. I'm black, I'm not the rest of them. Well, those are the ones who became police officers.
Right.
Those are the ones who are police officers. Like my son went to school in the Valley, and they said, well, you can't be from South Central. You're not like them. So, and I tell my son, well, that's the thinking of genocide. It's like, no, those other people, they deserve to die, And so just as important as the heroes, the villains have been identified as those other people. And those other people are non-white people. And it's amazing how they're able to do that,
but then,
and not have us.
And by the same token, you just said
Malcolm.
that when we look at them as not being the villain either, they are the villain because they're saying, well, you're the other and all that, but they're given a pass,
right,
because they're kind of passive about their racism,
and
right? They're a little passive about it,
and like we were, and our parents were, when we start feeling that we're in, then we look at our own as the other. Because like someone says, when you say he was the black Superman, or he's the black Santa Claus, so that normalizes Santa Claus as always being white. That's the normal thinking. So in our community, and in all communities, the normalness is white people are the norm, and let me become norm like that. And so when you become norm like that, you start looking back at your own and say, well, he had to do something. He's in the inner city. He had to have done something, though. And that's what you're starting to see this with the election of Biden and Kamala, is the fact that we're looking at two candidates and who are saying, hey, we're going to do well for the middle class. But they aren't speaking anything about the poor, because that's the other, that's my thinking.
Yeah, I don't think that we've done enough in-depth view of what exactly is going on with us, as a community. Who are we going to put our faith in terms of leadership? And no one has addressed these killings in the fashion and called it in the way that it needs to be called out. They're not going to do that. And that should tell us, that should speak louder than anything, really.
You're right about that. Absolutely right about
until
that.
we make them. And we're not we've been conditioned since 60s and 70s to, like I keep saying, to think of ourselves not like we did in early on, Oh, we got questions?
Yeah, they don't come up on mine.
I see. Go ahead.
Oh, is that what happened?
Okay.
I was trying to smooth.
So where we at right now, for us to excuse this violence and continue playing basketball, continue to talk about two candidates that need to be questioned, at the very least questioned. If you look at a Hillary Clinton, when I say that she was a Goldwater girl, you have to realize who Goldwater was in 1960s. He was the one who was saying those Mexicans, those blacks, we don't like them. And she was a proud Goldwater girl.
He was against the Civil Rights Act.
He was very much against the Civil Rights Act. He was what
does that tell you right there?
Exactly, And this was but this was a woman who was married to a guy who we called the first black president, Bill Clinton.
And see,
so we were delusional.
And we live in a world today, 2020, and we go, we think back 1964, and we go, how could anyone be against that?
Yeah.
It seems such a normal thing.
It seemed like
Satan
normal.
is
But
your
that wasn't
daddy.
that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago at all.
And
you
there
know.
was a lot of people who were against it.
And not only were they against it then, but now they're just
against it
learned
now.
to cover it up now. Now they've learned to talk. That's why they slip up and say things, and we go, "Oh, I can't believe you said that." You know, that's why they slip up and they reveal especially when Obama was running, when Clinton had, Bill Clinton said some negative things about him based upon race, and we said, "Oh, I can't believe he said that." No, he's the same guy he was back then. These people don't change, and we're just trying to tolerate
because
them.
it's built into the system.
Yeah.
That
Well,
even if they come into the system and they want to do good, they're still they can only do so much
They're
because
gonna
it's
do so
built
much.
in.
Yeah. You got any questions?
Let's look at some of these comments. We have some saying that basically he says burn, loot, murder. Well, those are the tenets of war. Mm-hmm. So we are at war. It was just undeclared, and it's only one side dying. Mm-hmm. The other part is Satan is your daddy. Mm-hmm. How come we're judging events off a video that doesn't contain the whole event? Mm-hmm. Okay, what whole event do you need? I don't know, but that's part of what we call cognitive dissonance, where you just have a belief that you're going to stick with no matter what fact slaps you in the face. Mm-hmm. What more do you need with a man walking away with his hands up and them pulling a trigger? I don't know, but
What else?
Slap the dog.
yeah, maybe that's what happened. Gangs aren't violent. Satan is your daddy, but they're really sticking with that one. Oh, that's his name? Okay, Satan is your daddy is his name, but he's saying that the caller lied. Everybody's lying. Well, if we're lying, why don't you call in? We still haven't heard from you. Satan is your daddy. Well, if Satan is your daddy, why don't you call in if it's a lie? If it's a lie, prove us a lie. That's all I ever say. You can just say anything, but prove it if we're lying. Mm-hmm. But so those are some of the comments. Mm-hmm. And basically, until we face the reality that this is an undeclared war, but it is a war, people are dying, and the feeding, I guess, it's like feeding blood to a shark. It's like a feeding frenzy, as they call it. Mm-hmm. So we have a feeding frenzy occurring, and our people are dying. Mm-hmm. So I don't care how your opinion on it. I really don't, because I'm looking at the fact that in short amount of times, the same scenario is playing out, and in every scenario there is an excuse. When an unarmed person is being shot, if not killed, maimed, if not maimed, damaged, and the whole community, the message is being sent to. And that's what permeates with us. The young man in Kenosha, Mr. Blake, was shot in front of his 3 sons. And you sit here and act like all black people, all brown people, people of color are criminals just by nature. And that's what's not being said. Now, you can call it a lie all you want, but the practice is in practice. And the outcomes are death, terror, and domestic terrorism has nothing to do with those people out there in the street. It has to do with those people behind those badges that are sanctioned to do this without consequence. We're saying if we go to jail, they should go to jail. That's all we're saying. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up, and those comments are an example of what we're facing with people who are really just starting to be saying that, look, we don't care. They're becoming hardened with Trump's message. And it's becoming a dangerous time, in the United States. People are picking their sides, and they're very violent. One thing we're not saying, I'm going to let Mike finish, and that is that, this is a country that has a bunch of people who have guns. They're very violent in the United States. And when you start talking about the division and you start talking about the hatred that's always been there for the other, that's the kind of times that we're living on. But and then we'll let you go. That it all depends on what we as a people are going to do. We have to start really becoming sensitive to this and not let life go by as usual. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I just want to say that, absolutely, and it starts at the top. And Trump, when he started his campaign, he came out and he said that Mexicans were all drug dealers and rapists and murderers, and that maybe there were some good ones in there somewhere, but he wasn't sure. And if he felt that way about Mexicans, you know how he feels about other people too, as well. I'm sure Mexicans are not at the top of his list of the people that he hates, but it does start at the top, and it works its way down, and it is built into the system. It's not something that can be easily fixed, but it is something that definitely people have to come together and mobilize and force a change. The change has to be forced. The change doesn't come on its own by peaceful protesting. Change comes by force.
That's it. And that's in a nutshell. I mean, they say they like to pull King out all the time as we close. King, said that violent or so-called riots are the language of the unheard. And so people keep saying, like, the appeal needs to be made to bring attention. The attention is here. The appeal needs to be made to a higher moral standard. What moral and what standard? When you say that there's violence, there is violence. And that's what's unfortunate. This is the most violent country on the face of the earth. This country imprisons 1/4 of the world's prisoners. This country, in a propaganda teaches you to love violence. It's in cartoons. It's in our sports. It's in quote unquote reality TV. It's in every aspect of life. They teach you to love violence, except in defense of your God-given human rights. And so I end with the Black Panthers in 41st and Central. When that occurred, when they were attacked and they had a standoff for hours, all day. And Wayne Farr, Ronald Freeman, may they all rest in peace. As we end with their pledge, which was they were going to stand to the end. They wasn't worried about tomorrow. But for that, those hours, as Wayne Farr said, I felt the freest that I've ever felt in America. So we say we need to be that free as well. Until next time, don't talk politics.